Good morning, everyone. Father Gallagher here. I have my Christmas mask on because I just wanted to remind you that the Christmas season is still going. It's 17 days this year, and we have a couple more days to go. And we will end the Christmas season this Sunday with the Feast of the Baptism of Jesus. And then we will launch into ordinary time until Ash Wednesday. So I have a few little things about Christmas I'd like to pass on to you. First of all, here's a kind of an unusual fact that you may not know. His name was James Pierpont, and he died in 1866 after living what most people would consider a life of failure. He was a graduate of Yale, specialized in education. Wanted to be a teacher, but that failed because he just couldn't control the students. Then he became a lawyer, and that failed too because he was too generous with his clients. He published a book of poems, but it did not sell enough for him to make a living on. He became a minister, but the congregation thought him to be too liberal, and he wasn't that good of a preacher. He tried politics and ran for governor and for Congress, but of course he lost. He volunteered as chaplain during the Civil War, but that lasted 2 weeks. It was a strain on his health, for he was, at that time, 76 years of age. Finally, someone found him a job in the U.S. Treasury Department, and he finished out his life as a menial file clerk. A small stone marks his grave in the cemetery in Cambridge, Massachusetts. But in one area, he was a success. He wrote a song that we hear at Christmas time. It wasn't about God or angels or Santa Claus. It was about riding in the snow and the breeze and the feeling of riding in a sled. You see, James Pierpont wrote Jingle Bells. It's a song that's sung and heard by millions of people around Christmas time. So in the end, James Pierpont was a success. Here's a Christmas story for you. The man was shopping in Giant Eagle, and he heard this loud crash and shattering of glass. And it was in the aisle over where he was, and he went over to see what happened, and there were a lot of people just standing around doing nothing. And there was this poor older lady on her knees. Her cart had hit the shelf and knocked down all these products and broke a lot of the glass bottles, and she was crying, frantically trying to pick up the pieces. So he went over and knelt down beside her and tried to calm her and said, it'll be all right. I'll help you. And while he was helping her, the manager of the store came over, and he knelt down too with her and said, look, we'll clean this up. Don't worry about it. She said, well, I have to pay for all this. He said, no, we have insurance. So you just go right on about your shopping, and thank you for shopping Giant Eagle. And I thought that was a great image for what Jesus does, and especially why he came at Christmas time. Because we're often on our knees in our lives, embarrassed by what we've done or what sins we've committed, and sometimes our lives are shattered in pieces. And especially at that time, the God who specializes in dark times, he comes to us to comfort us and to help us pick up the pieces, especially now as we face this pandemic into the new year. He's there to say, don't be afraid. And when we say, well, I got to pay for all this that I've done in my life, he says, well, we have insurance. We have the insurance of my blood on the cross. We have the insurance of the resurrection. So that's kind of a little image of Christmas and really why Jesus came to be with us, especially in dark times, and to help us pick up the pieces. I'd like to close today with a little, um, it's kind of on Mary. Mary's the great, one of the great images and persons of Christmas. And I've said this many times in sermons. I think she did not know. You hear that song, Mary, did you know? She didn't know, and that was her greatness. That she looked into a future that she did not know or even understand, and she said yes in the face of that. And I think at the end of all of that, I think she might have said something like this, and I'll read this little poem to you, and that's how we'll close. This is Mary speaking to us. If I would have known that my son would be born in another town in a cold stable, I would still have said yes. If I would have known that Joseph and I had to run for our lives because someone was going to kill my child, I still would have said yes. If I knew that we had to go to Egypt and live as exiles and refugees until it was safe to return, I would have said yes. If I knew that we would lose my son for 3 days and not understand his behavior, I would have said yes. If I knew that he would be rejected by his own hometown and by all his relatives, I would still have said yes. If I knew that the most powerful and trusted religious leaders would consider him a heretic, I would have said yes. If I knew that his disciples would run away and that one of them would betray him, I would have said yes. And if I knew he would be arrested and scourged and mocked and crucified, I would have said yes. And if I knew that I would have to stand at the foot of the cross and watch him die and be able to do nothing, I would still have said yes. If I would have known that I would hold his dead body in my arms and place him in the tomb, I would have said yes. And if I knew that he would rise from the dead and forgive those who persecuted him, I would definitely have said yes. Be it done unto me according to thy word. That is why Mary is our greatest saint. Thanks, everybody. You have a good day, and stay safe.